Welcome to my podcast. Today I'll be talking about players to pick up in fantasy hockey and fantasy football. I'll also be talking about sleepers in fantasy basketball. Fantasy hockey waiver wire number 4. Center C-Adrian Kempe. C-Adrian Kempe put up 3 goals and 5 points in the last week. He plays on the second line and second power play unit of the LA Kings. Left winger Sven Baertschi. Sven Baertschi put up 4 goals and 5 points along with 3 power play points last week. He plays on the second line and second power play unit of the Vancouver Canucks. Right winger Evgenii Dadonov. Evgenii Dadonov put up 3 goals, 4 points, and 1 power play point last week. He plays on the first line and first power play unit of the Florida Panthers. Defenseman D-Hampus Lindholm and D-Esa Lindell. D-Hampus Lindholm put up 2 points and 1 power play point since returning to the lineup. If he is still available in your league, pick him up. D-Esa Lindell scored 2 goals and 2 power play points in the last week. He plays on the second power play unit of the Dallas Stars. Goalie Markstrom. Markstrom has played tremendous this season, but he just hasn't got the goal support. He could be a solid third goalie in the head-to-head league. Next week, I'll be talking about must-own players in fantasy hockey. Fantasy football waiver wire, players to pick up for week 9. Quarterback Jimmy Garoppolo. Jimmy Garoppolo is going to get the chance to be the starting quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers. Pick him up in deep leagues. Running back Alex Collins. Alex Collins had his breakout game in week 8, rushing for 113 yards, and he also had 30 receiving yards. He has a good matchup against the Tennessee Titans in week 9. Running back DeAndre Washington. DeAndre Washington had back-to-back weeks with double-digit fantasy points. Pick him up in deep leagues. Wide receiver R.B. Anderson. R.B. Anderson put up 16.50 fantasy points in week 8 and has a good matchup against the Buffalo Bills in week 9. Wide receiver Mohamed Sanu. Mohamed Sanu had 74 receiving yards and 1 touchdown in week 8. He looks to continue his strong play against the Carolina Panthers in week 9. Tight end Austin Hooper. Austin Hooper had 10.70 fantasy points in week 8. He looks to continue his solid play against the Carolina Panthers in week 9. The Philadelphia Eagles defense. The Philadelphia Eagles defense put up 18 fantasy points in week 8 and have a good matchup against the Denver Broncos in week 9. Kicker Adam Vinateri. Adam Vinateri is still one of the most consistent kickers in the NFL. Next week, I'll be talking about players to pick up in fantasy football for week 10. Sleepers in fantasy basketball. Point guard De'Aaron Fox. De'Aaron Fox wasn't drafted until the 12th round in most leagues, but he has been the second best point guard in the league behind Ben Simmons. Shooting guard RW-Robby Hood. RW-Robby Hood wasn't drafted until the 10th round in most leagues. He is averaging 15.3 points on 46% shooting. Small forward Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown wasn't drafted until the 13th round in most leagues, but he is already making a huge impact for the Boston Celtics. Power forward Derrick Favors. Derrick Favors wasn't drafted until the 9th round in most leagues, but he's playing way better than other power forwards drafted before him. Center C-Skal Labissiere. C-Skal Labissiere wasn't drafted in most leagues. In fact, he was still available in most waiver wires at the beginning of the season. He is currently averaging 12.2 points, 5.2 rebounds, and 1 block this season. Next week, I'll be talking about players to avoid in fantasy basketball. Next podcast, I'll be talking about must-own players in fantasy hockey, players to pick up in fantasy football for week 10, and players to avoid in fantasy basketball.